In order to benefit all sentient beings, let's give rise to bodhicitta. We'll continue with the path instruction of daily meditation practice with the visualization of Shakyamuni Buddha. We in total use about 4 classes, and today is the last class of this teaching. Tomorrow, I will give teaching of Nagarjuna's letter to a friend. That's the plan for tomorrow. For those of you who can't study the words of my perfect teacher first, I think it will be best for you to start with words, letter to a friend. I will give the oral transmission. Can you hear me? Letter to a friend. Mainly, I will give you the oral transmission and will receive the wisdom from Nagarjuna, and this is an auspicious condition to do so. The translations will be provided. On Sunday, I will give teaching on the practice of Vajrasattva. I'll give a teaching on that. On 12, 13, 14, 11, 12, 13, 14, I will also give teachings, some short teachings on preliminary practices, as well as some other short teachings. I think lots of our Sangha members over here, they've studied it before, but I still decided to give teaching on those because I think it will be quite helpful for those lay practitioners. Now, I think majority of people do attach great importance to the preliminary practices and some very simple practices. And there are people who continue to have great longing to study the Dharma. That's very good. Just as a disciple of the Buddha asked the Buddha, saying that what kind of mentality we should have in listening to the Dharma. And the Buddha said that you should listen with the kind of intention of longing as the ocean. It is the best that you have this longing, continue to have this kind of longing. It is good to feel content with the worldly life and not searching for too much material gains, but it is the best to have that kind of longing always towards listening to the Dharma. Tomorrow, we will have the chanting beforehand, and from 10th onwards, the chanting would be rather shorter, as well as the classes would be shorter as well. So let's continue with the classes. We talked about the merit of Shakyamuni Buddha and the practice of Shakyamuni Buddha. I think lots of people, after listening to this particular teaching, many people told me that they had a lot more faith towards Shakyamuni Buddha now. I know many people probably studied it before, but they didn't really attach great importance to this teaching. So upon hearing this kind of feedback, I myself feel really, really happy because it feels that my students are now really receiving these blessings from this teaching as well as from Shakyamuni Buddha. So this kind of faith is definitely the genuine blessings. Therefore, I really think that after this past few days classes, including there are practitioners who stayed here for over 10 or 20 years, they really felt that the devotion and faith that they have towards the Buddha is much greater before. And some people told me that it is that only I myself have a great interest towards the biography of Shakyamuni Buddha, but now after hearing this teaching, I feel that this is quite important teaching, and I understand why you have such great attachment or interest with this biography. Another teaching that's Ponsok Rinpoche's teaching. Ponsok Rinpoche was giving teaching at Halifax at Trungpa Rinpoche's center in Halifax back in 1993. That the teaching was recorded, and in that teaching, Ponsok Rinpoche gave that teaching for 2 hours. He talks about the faith towards Buddha and the Dharma. Now that video is now transcribed as well as translated and subtitled. So in the second half of the year, I really hope that you can study it carefully because this is quite important. Just as how for the worldly people, when there are important messages to be sent from the management level, then all the employees should listen to it. Just like that, Ponsok Rinpoche had really important message and such a great presentation that he taught 20 years ago. Now this is transcribed and this is then written down into words. Therefore, I really hope that all of you could take the opportunity to study it not only the words but also the meaning behind each words. And I really hope that you could then write your review of that class. This is really just a preview because this is not really ready yet. But in the second half of the year, then I really hope that you can study it then. Let's now continue with our classes. The classes on this pith instruction of daily meditation. This is the last part of it. Yesterday we talked about how after the blessings of Shakyamuni Buddha and practicing in this particular practice, you can see there are different insights or different kind of experiences that you can see inside of your dreams as well as the different lights. And today it's about the time of death. When people are facing death, there are people who die out of desperation, and there are people who die. There are people who die with a sense of desperation, desperately grasping towards life with great suffering. And there are practitioners who die with a sense of grace. And over here it says that although there are many different bodhisattva practices for the time of death, including the 11 concepts taught in the sutra, the crucial point is taught and contained in the Noble Wisdom of Passing Sutra. These 11 practices, I think a little while ago when I was going through the Tibetan version of Tripitaka, I remembered of reading it, but now I really can't retrieve where it is now. It was really well done. It's such wonderful teaching. At that time, I saw that inside of that sutra, which is not translated into Chinese. I really wanted to translate it, but now I really can't remember at this moment. And it's also taught and contained in the Noble Wisdom of Passing Sutra. At that time, in fact, I think I translated it back in 2017. It's really short. And back in 2017, and this particular teaching is with great importance in many different traditions. And it is said that during the time of Pamasambhava, he brought one of these sutra. He brought this sutra to the noble family, and is called the 5 Noble Family Sutras. This sutra is translated into over 10 different languages, including English, French, Dutch, Portuguese, Spanish, and Thai. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche from Tibetan Buddhism, he also propagated and promoted this sutra and advised people to study it. So, this Noble Wisdom of Passing Sutra is very important. Why is that? Maybe it's because Tsochum Ditsen, the king, attached great importance to this particular sutra, and because the noble family really placed great importance to it, therefore it then was taken great care of. There is the catalog that is the catalog that has different sutras that's translated from Chinese into Tibetan language. But later on, lots of those sutras are no longer available or are no longer found in the Chinese language anymore, but it is in Tibetan language, and later on it was then propagated through the Tibetan language because it's translated into many other different languages. I found it out of the Tripitaka, and I went to an old Lama and asked him to give me oral transmission, and he said, "Oh, I can recite it," and then he recited it right on the spot. So this Noble Wisdom of Passing Sutra is quite important, and you can see how the practitioners really attach great importance to it. I think the English version, nowadays they have like 5 or 6 different versions. Nowadays, people don't really attach great importance to the Dharma, rather they attach great importance to hot pot, to good meal. But when it comes to translating sutras, it's not really that important to them. Anyhow, this Noble Wisdom of Passing Sutra is already taught and translated, and over here it then talks about how during the time of death, the Bodhisattva meditated on the wisdom of passing as follows.
就是已经明确步入这个死亡的这个时候啊，就是这个境
Whenever
地
you
的时
think
候，
I'm
那么
dying,
我们应该观想自
visualizing
己的头
the
顶上呢，本是释迦牟尼
Guru
佛安住。
Shakyamuni Buddha
要做到这一
on the
点呢，
crown
必
of
须
your
要
head
以
and
蒙昧的
generating
信心
intense
要专
faith.
注它。
So at
就
that
是
time,
这
you
个
have to have
这个
great
后面也会
intense
讲
faith and
我
then
们每个人都
focus
是确实
one
离开
pointedly.
这个世界的。离开世界
At
的
the
时候，有
time
些
of
人是
death,
可能长期这个受这个疾病的这种疾病的煎熬，
maybe
就然后这样
there
的
are
呢，
people
这
who
个时候可能
have
观想活
suffered
动
a
比较容易
lot
一点。有些人呢，
before
可能就是发
dying,
生什么车祸
maybe
啊，
because of
发生什么这
cancer
个
or
地
some
震
kind
啊，
of
这海啸啊，
illness. They
甚至
suffer
可
a
能
lot,
突
so
然的
it's
一个
very
疾病
difficult
就
for them
就
to
就
focus.
当下就到下
But
去了，
and
就
there
那
are
种的话
people
可能
maybe
没办法观想。但是如果自己有这
maybe
种机会，
lost
自己也
their
觉得
life
啊，
because
现
of
在我的
earthquake,
思想
because of
思想
tsunami
已
and so
经这
on,
个
and
出
they
现了，
just
就是
lost
肯
their
定是
life
马上要
in
会死的。那么
uh,
这个时候
in
呢，你
one
就可以
moment,
观
and
这
maybe
个
there
在
is
自
no
己的
time
头
for
顶
them
上
to
释迦牟尼
visualize
佛的话
Shakyamuni
呢，
Buddha
这个
on the
非常重
crown
要。
of
这个
their
是
head.
其实今天
But
我们讲的
for
这个是渐变一
others
体，每
who
一个修行人
dying
经济不是很
who
高
have
的
a
人呢，
period of
也
time
可以
to
能做
focus
得到。
and to
所以在座
practice
的人呢，
before their
我觉
actual
得还
death,
是
I think it's quite
应该是
possible.
有这个收获的。
Because you definitely
那么要
will
而
at
且
that
要
time
蒙
to
蒙
sense
蔽的这种
that
信
death
心
is
来专
coming.
注，
So
这
at
就
that
是
time,
释迦
you
牟尼
should
佛
then
或者释
focus
迦牟尼
one
佛
pointedly
就
with
在我
great
这个
faith
顶上
and
这样
visualize
想。
that Shakyamuni
然后
Buddha
接
is
下
sitting
来
on
呢，
the
应该
crown
怎
of
么
your
样思
head.
维呢？要
So
思维这
what's
个一切
next?
万法都是无常的，就是
Then
当我们遇到死亡的时候呢，不能就是啊，
think
就
in
是
such a
心特
way,
别
saying
着
that it
急
is
啊，
not
就是
only
痛苦
me.
啊，然后这个呼唤啊，就是这样没有意义的。就是
Do
这个时候
not
怎么
cry
想呢？
out
应该这样
loud,
观
do
想
not
啊，就是
then feel
不独自
really
自己一个人
anxious
呢，
and
就是会这个
fearful,
死亡的啊。
because at
而
that
所
time
有
it's
的
the
众
best
生
to
呢，这
just
个都是难逃
just
这个死亡
contemplate
这个
on
规律啊。
impermanence
我
and
们在
think
这个
that
轮
all
回当
sentient
中，就
beings
如
are
今的这个
subject
轮回当中呢，我也好，
to
其他众
death,
生呢，虽然这个经历
to the
无
law of
数的
death,
这种
no
生
one
死
is
流转，
exempt.
但是
Although we have
除了这个感
repeatedly
受这个生
undergone
死和痛
countless
苦以外
birth
的话
and
呢，
death here in
从来没
samsara,
有
we
这
have
个与
only
死亡
ever
任
know
何
the
意义
suffering
啊，
of
就是
death,
我们
and
大
all
多
these
数的
births
众
have
生
been
生生
entirely
死死
devoid
生
of
死死，一
meaning.
直是在
All
轮
of
回当
the
中不
sentient
断的
beings
这个就是起
continuously
起落落
to
的这
wander
个
in
扭转
this
啊，就是不
samsara,
断的去
ups
扭
and
转。但
down
是每
all
一个
the
扭转的
time.
话呢，
But
也许在
in
这个轮回
each
当中
of
又
the
又这个
rebirths,
死了，又生了，
they
又死
will
了，这样
die again
其实我们的
in
死
such
亡都是并
rebirths
没有
and
就
then
是解决
reborn
大的
again.
问题，就是一
So
直是在扭转。
So
那么这次的话
giving
呢，
birth
我应该
and
是要这个立正
being
是死
born
亡呢，
and
就是都有这个价
dying
值和
really
意义
never
啊。我应该想
brought
尽办法，就是
any
我这次的
meaning.
死亡呢，
But now
就
I will
是
make sure
要
that
有
this
这个意
present
义，
death
要有
of
意义
mine
是
is
什么呢？
meaningful.
就是您死的时候就是
What
观这
does
个
that
佛
mean?
陀，
It
或者说是
means
观
that
这个
at
无
that
常，
time,
这
at
个
the
很
time
重
of
要的。
death, you
我
should
们可
then
能在座的各位
think,
也学过吧，《
contemplate
地藏本
about
愿经》呢，《
impermanence,
地藏本
and
愿
then
经》当中讲，
also
临
visualize
死
the
的时候呢，
Buddha.
就是如果
I think
如果
lots
观
of
这
you
个
probably studied
佛
the
啊、
Sutra
菩
of
萨
Kshitigarbha's
啊
Great
这样的话，就
Aspiration,
是还有呢
where it
甚至
says,
那个就是大乘的这个佛教的一个偈颂，就是听闻的话
even
呢，那么
upon
就是
hearing
除了
one
无间罪
stanza
的，
of the
除
Mahayana
了
Sutra
无间罪的人以
before
外呢，就是不
dying,
会什么就是堕入这个三恶趣
people
啊，
with
这些
the
都是很有
5
很有意义的。
inexpiable misdeeds can be stoned.
好像好多都是女的。
Why so many female?
只有一个男的，这里有一个，
Only 1, 2 men?
这里有一个，
3?
那边有一个。
And fourth one there.
我看男总举个手。
Can all the men raise your hands?
下面女总举手。
Now women.
原来是这样的世界。
What a world.
那怎么办呢？
What should we do?
这样的。接下来就是我们像刚才就是讲
So the kind of people who have conducted the 5 inexpiable misdeeds can be spared from the lower realm as well. Anyhow, the death that we experienced so many times in the samsara really doesn't have any meaning before. Until now, this death, you can make it meaningful. So at that time, having contemplated in this way, reflect that there is not a single condition phenomena, including within the internal or external, or the past, present, or future, that is immune to impermanence. Everything is impermanent. You can see it and you can observe it and you know it. The nature of arising in a season, even for a single instant, within the category of the conditions, there are those things with whose continuum ceases after a short time, such as some small insects, or even some infants who were born in the morning, and some of them would die at night. But compared to that, compared to the water bubbles or bolts of lightning, there are also those whose continuum cease after a long period of time, such as the realms of this world. It is longer, but whether they abide for a long period of time or a short period of time, all conditioned things must cease in the end, and there is no one that is unchanging. You know this, isn't it? Everything is impermanent. Life is impermanent. That is why all the sentient and all the material world will eventually cease. And there's no world, the entire world of vessel and its content, the environment and its inhabitants will also disintegrate. And if even the Tathagata and transcendent conqueror demonstrated death in the manner of passing into nirvana, then what need is there to speak of the mundane beings that's like us? As the Tathagata said, everything conditioned is impermanent. This is the summary. There's a sutra, is called the Meditation Samadhi Sutra. It says that the world, whether if it's big or small, there's nothing that is permanent. None of those would abide for a long period of time, and everything appears just like bolts of lightning. So in this world, this is the truth of it. So when we then come to the time of our death, we should really prepare for it. Nowadays, whether it's radiation or some chemicals, cancer, some of garbage food. Our world is full of different conditions that would cause death. Even for young people, they could catch some kind of illness really soon, and there's nothing that could save them, and there's really nothing that they can do. So at that moment, do not feel that why me, and do not think that why am I dying now? But he's not dying yet. It's not my turn. So at that time, do not consider that your death has anything to do with other people's lives. But not understanding the nature of conditions like this, being averse to separation and death, and delighting in generating and in gathering and birth. Usually that's how we feel about all the phenomena that happens, all the events happening in our life. We really don't like divorce or dying. We really like partying and birthdays. But really, the day of your birth is the day that marks your steps towards death. So yes, on one hand you can say happy birthday, but is it
这
happy
因为
birthday
这
or
个
happy
贪着这个
suffering?
轮回啊，
In
就是
this
所以这个
samsara,
反
it's
反
hard
复
to
复的
say.
扭转于这个旋转于轮回当中。因此，我们即将
So
到来的这个死亡呢，
sentient beings
作为这
remain
个
in
非常
samsara,
难得的
circling
人生
around
当中
again
善
and
知识。
again.
从
Yet
中呢，
I shall
就是
take
你
my
要知
own
并宣
death
示一
when
切
it
有为
comes
法，都是所谓
as
这
a
个无常的
teacher,
道理。
a
这是
virtuous
修行
spiritual
当中
friend,
还
and
是
will
很重要的。
realize
我们要
from the
这个
depth
观
of
修
my
一个
heart
无常的法。
how conditioned things are
我们这个自
impermanent.
己啊，
So
就
it's
是在
quite
临时
important
需要
to
如此的这个
practice
观
and
想，就是尤
contemplate
其是
up
临死
on
的时候要观想。
impermanence all
还要
the
观想
time.
什么呢？我们
It
在
is
这
quite
里有一种
important
这
to
个方法，就是
visualize
希望真的自己
the
自己
Buddha
人类
at
死
the
最
time
后
of
已经
death.
不幸了的话呢，
And
希
there's
望我们
another
这样发
method.
愿，生生世世当中都圆我了这万法
The
无
method,
常的
what
真
is that
理。
method? The
这
method
你
is
在
to
临死的
then
时候
make
呢，这
the
样就是
aspiration,
这
thinking
次的
that
话呢，我
I
就没
will
办法
decide
力干
on
这个
this
人。
with
但是
certainty.
但愿我生生世世当中呢，
Think
不要碰到
earnestly
无
like
常，
this
并且
at the
呢，就
time
是
of
不贪
death
着一
in
切
all
的有
future
为法
lifetimes
因为
to
我
until
们
I
贪着有为
attain the
法的
essence
原因，
of
我们在轮回
awakening
当中
by
就是如此如此的这
understanding
个痛
everything
苦啊。
conditioned
原
to
我
be
呢，就是
impermanent.
这个就是就
May
是
I
慈愿能圣现，就是
not
就是我
become
们这个
attached
我
to
生
a
生世世的
conditioned
碰到这
object
个无
of
常的道理。
experience.
生生世世呢，就是
And
不要就是贪着这些有识法而不断的扭转。
May I
这个
then
呢，就是基金就
always
是本师释迦牟尼佛
understand
和一切诸佛菩
the
萨，就
truth
是
of
一定要就是
impermanence
加持我，
for
日日
lifetimes
夜夜的
and
加持我。这样
for
的话呢，
that,
我们的有
Guru,
些
Lord of
誓言
sages,
呢，我们的有些发愿，
victorious
我们的有
ones,
些
and your
精进
heirs,
修行的话呢，
I
就是也
supplicate
是
you, grant your blessing
能这个
that
成
it may
功
be
的
so.
就是这种修行
If
就
we
是
can
确
then
实
make
是
such
有
aspiration,
能
the
力
time
的
of death,
看有一个
and contemplate like such,
什么经典忘了，
practice
有一
like
个
such,
经
then
典当
it,
中
we,
就是
our
以前那
practice
个
will
印度啊，
will
就是在
succeed.
那个社会
I
国
can't
有
remember where I read this
一对那个
story.
夫妻，就是然后
There
过得
was
生活是很好
a
的，但是
couple
他们呢就
living
是
in
就
Vishali.
是旗下就是没有
They
这个
had
子女。后来的话
really
呢，就是他
wonderful,
的这个
happy
妻子
life
就已经
together.
离开世间
They
了。
had a good
离开世间之
relationship.
后的话呢，就是
And
他
then
那个
the
丈夫的
wife
话呢
died
也
first.
是到这个寺院里面
The
就出
husband,
家了。
after
出家这个妻子呢，
his
以前
wife's
就是生前的时候，经常对那
passing,
个
he then
三宝
got
女信息啊
ordained
这个
and
供养
then
这个僧众啊
went
就是这样
to
的这
a
种工作
monastery.
呢，他就转生到这个33天去了。
Because of
33
the
天去了以后，
wife's
他就
merit
观
of
察就是
believing
在这个
in
天界当中的话呢，
the
就是
three jewels
33天
and
的一个天女吧，
generated
就是他
virtue
就
and
没有
merit
就是
during lifetime,
就没有
he
找
then
到
was
一个适合的就是
reborn
他的这
in
个
the
就是丈
Trias
丈夫啊，然后他用天眼观察的时候呢，
Triad
就原来这个人世间的这个他的丈夫呢，就是对他
heaven,
就
the
是应该是
33
比较
heaven,
适合的。但是呢，就是
and
他
being
已经这
reborn
个
there
出
as a
家了，已经
celestial
他在
being,
这
the
个
wife
在寺
couldn't
庙里
really
面呢，就
find
是边禅期
another
边呢就是经常
suitable
就是打
husband
扫啊，就
in
是
the
在
celestial
他庙
realm.
当中就是经常扫地啊，
And
就是做
she
为僧
then
众做一些事情。
one day
那个时
used
候呢，就是
her
他有一次正
divine
在他
eye
大坐的
and
时候，就是他
looked
就
at
显现在他面
what
前，就是以天女
her
的形象来显现的。
husband
然
was
后他那
doing,
个就
and
老
her
和尚呢，就是
husband
问，就是你
was
是什么？
then
他说我是
cleaning
你
and
这个
sweeping
以前
the
的这
floor
个
of
这个妻子啊，现
monastery.
在在这个33天，如
And,
果你再继续这样
and
修行的
then
话呢，
she
那么就
also,
是这
through
个我
her
通过天眼观察的话
divine
呢，
eye,
你能降
she
生到
noticed
不
that
是你能转
these
生到我们的
merits
这个
that
天界来。然
the
后
husband
看这个
generated
他
could
做了
then
一个老
help
和
him
尚
to
呢，就是可
reborn
能修
in
行不
the
太好，
same
就是他就
33
就非常
level,
欢喜，就是他
33
就更加精
heavenly
进的修
realm.
行。
And
更加精
so
进的修
she
行的原因的话呢，就是
descended
因为他
to
修的太精
the
进了。
earth
后来
again
那个天
and
女
then
有这个
told
天
him
眼来
that,
观
well,
察的
if you
时候呢，
continue to practice
他
this way,
就
then you
已
could
经
be
这个他
reborn
的善根已
in
经超
the
越了33
33
天了。
heaven, and then we can be husband and
已
wife
经他
again.
可以能转生到这
Upon
个数
hearing
岁天
this,
了，
and
就
the
是
husband
33天
continued
上
to
了，那
practice
就这个
very
天女就上不去了。
diligently, and
然后他就又下来，就是
and
又下来
he
跟他
generated
这个
enough
就
merit
现身，
of
就是
passing
以
the
现在来讲，
33
我们就没
heaven
有办
and
法了，
be
就是你
reborn on
就已
the
经这个超生到
higher
这
higher
个
level of
上面
celestial
就已
realm.
经这个
And
转生
then
到
the wife
什
noticed,
么这
saying that,
个
well,
就度
I
岁天
guess
去了。
you,
但是
you're
这
level is much higher than me now.
他既然这样的话，那又不
And
断的修行，那
he,
后来的话，那就没有
upon
锻炼到
hearing
这个
this
天
and
界，
continue
在
to
地藏
practice
当中
very
获得这
diligently
个圣果，
again
所
with
以
meditation
修行
and
的
so
话，那
on,
就有时候
and
可以这么
within
讲，
one
就
lifetime
是
he
不管
attained
你发愿也
arhathood.
好，你修什么法
So
的话，如果
practice,
我们心特别切的话，那
if
他的这个
you
真的
have
这个
great
未来
aspiration,
的这
if
种
you
天
have
赋呢，
great
不断的可以
longing,
转换，就是不断的可以
your
切换，就是你本
destination
身
will
是通
continue
过这
to
样的一种
change
修行呢，
based
可
on
能
your
是
practice.
好一点， 就像以前那个白
This
夜
is
经当中
probably
也
the
是，
best
有些这个
that you
人呢
continue
就是没
to
有这个很好的修
pursue
行，
a
没有
higher
1到3
goal
知识的话，那
and
就是编成目录啊。
that
然后后来呢，
will
就是因为1到
help
3知识
you
的原
to
因呢，不
accumulate
需要
more
就是转
merit.
到动物当中
Just as
等等
in
有这
the
样的
100
因缘。
karmic
所以我们在
stories,
座的各位，
where
有
it
时候
told the
我
story
是
of
很
how a
欢喜，
person
比如说
was supposed
我
to
们
be
这个
reborn
有一
reborn
些这
as
个
a
佛教徒
dog,
啊，
but
就是
because
现在
of
这
the
个可能
merit
修
that
养
he
上就是稍微过一
accumulated
点的话，
before
不
death,
一定每
upon
个人都
hearing
修得
his
特别好。
destination,
但是呢，
he
每一个人如
his
果这个没有学过的话，
fate,
至少也
he
是可能
then
杀
practiced
生啊，
and
就是做
then
很多
was
很多的
later
坏
on
事。学
reborn
过
in
因果
pure
的话呢，
realm.
并不是完全断掉所有的坏事，但是呢，就减
So
少了
for
很多。
practitioners
你应
like
该可以
us,
做。比如
what
说
we
以前
should
可能
do
我们就
is,
是
of course,
这
it's
个不
very
择手
difficult
段
for
的，
us
就
to
是做不做
completely
各
cut
样的
off
非法的事情，
all
就是甚至
the
我们可能杀害
unreasonable
众生
deeds
啊，
or
就是
all
天
the
天的是电
misdeeds.
赏，就是
But at
吃
least what
吃
you
鱼
could
吃
do
海
is
鲜，
to
就是
cut
特别
down
的这样
of
的。
all
但
of
现在
those
呢，就是
misdeeds
就
that
学
you
了后，
used
这
to do,
至少
to
也是
decrease them,
有些恶事
such
这个
as lots
断
of
了的话
people
呢，
used
这
to
种功德你寄
order
送
the
到别
live
人来时
animals
呢，
and
也可
kill
以
them
就
and
是
eat
可
them.
以这个献钱
And
啊。所以
nowadays, at
一方面
least
呢，我们这
you
个有时候
become
啊，就是做
vegetarian.
这些事
It
情
will
呢，是
help
比较
you
辛苦的。
in
但
such
另
a
一方面的话
in
呢，
the way
大家
to
有所
then
这个
stop
成就，
your
在积增当
previous
中有所
misdeeds.
这样的转变的
Therefore,
话，那就
whatever
也是非常
changes,
的这
positive
个
changes
欢
you
喜
can
啊。
do
我
in
也
this
希望我们各
lifetime,
个地方的
then
发心人
you
员的
should
话，
do it
有时
so
候
that
就
it
是
will
为
help
这
you
个僧众
in
也好，
your
为那个大众这
future
个发心，就是做事情
destination
呢，就是特别的
after
这种
death.
泛信吧，就是觉得是满足很多人，就是自己的身体也这个不行，
I
心理也撑不住，
really want to
很
say
多很
that
多的压力和
lots
困难。
of
有时候
our
想呢，
people
就是就像金庄论里面讲是，有
over
些菩萨的
here,
话呢，就
they
是为了一个
provide
众生的相
service.
续当中，种下一个善根
When
的
I
话呢，
contemplate
那
on
这
it
个
myself,
千百
I
万劫
really
当中
think
的
that
可以
it's
入
really
住在这个
difficult
轮回或者
to
是恶趣
serve
当中。
that many
那这
people
种
who
精
come
神
over
相比起
here
来的话
and
呢，我
to
们还
serve
是这个
many
累一
different
点。我们这
people,
个故意
different
做的
kinds
话
of
呢，
people.
也
It's
是
very
非常有意义
tiring
很有
and
价值。所以在这
but
里呢，也是发这
just
样的
by
愿望，就
serving
是
one
不
person
管是临终的时候，平时也是我们要发这样的愿，就是我们
could
不要
generate
这
a
个
great
以失
merit,
之
and
而这
therefore
个
it
束缚
is
住，希
it's
望
quite
这个
important
诸佛菩萨也
to
经常
make
加
such
持我们，就是这样的。
aspiration
然后这样思维以
and
后呢，就像我们刚才讲的
supplicate
一
to the
样，大
Bodhisattva
乘
so
那
that
个
they
临
can
终智慧经或
grant
者
us
是正
blessings
涅槃智慧
and
经当中呢，就是也继续
we
这样
will
这
be
个
able
做到
to
的，就是我们要这个思索这个他的
accomplish
这个修心，就是金融的意
Then,
义。
as it is
那
said
金
in the
融的意义
Mahayana
呢，就
Sutra,
是
the
诸法
noble
自性
wisdom
呢，就
of
是清
passing,
净的，
where
应该
it
观
says
这个
that
无实
since
相。
all
那么
phenomena
具有
are
菩提
naturally
心的人
pure,
呢，就是当观这
meditate
个
on the concept of
就是
non-entity,
观这个
fully
什么
endowed with
大悲心
bodhicitta.
就是大悲相，就是它这里这是一段，就下面会有解释这个道理。然后呢，
Later,
就是心性这个
the
空性光明者的
the
话呢，就是
passages
要
will
当观什
explain
么，就
this
是
part.
密探相。然
Meditate
后
on
这
the
就
concept
是
of
心呢，
great
就智慧
compassion, since the
的因
nature
呢，
is
就是不要这
unseeable
个在别的地
luminosity.
方寻找真
Meditate
正
on
的
not
觉
being
啊，就是
attached
这是
to
我们
anything at all. Mind is the cause for
这
arising
个
of
刚
the
才那部
wisdom.
经典当
Do
中，
not search
我
for
对
the
了一下，
Buddha
我们就是最
elsewhere.
近翻译的这个的话呢，好像可能藏文的版本上稍微有点不同，就是里
The
面就是
Tibetan
做了一
version
个
of
无缘，好
this
像就是
verses, these verses are a
有这个
little
无
bit
缘相的
different.
这么一个
In
句吧，
Tibetan
就是其
version
他都是
also talked about
基
the
本上是相同
uncharacteristic
的。
aspect,
那么这个
but the
文
rest
字
of
的
the
这一段
verses
文
are
字的
really
内
the
容呢，
same.
就是这样
The
的。就是下
content
面
of
我去年讲的
these
时候都是忘了，
verses
就是这里
are
面就是有
then
有过这个，
explained.
就现在
Last
记
year
性
when I
就是
was
还是不像以前的了，
teaching,
就是所以
I forgot that
就这个
these
翻译的是
verses,
不知当时也
the,
像是不知
the,
道在
these
哪里里面
verses
有
were
某个人给
included
去
in
介
this
绍过，
teaching.
但是
I
一直
just
想不起来
last
是
year
光
when I
光
was
当
given
中的，
teaching
因为
on
10多年了。
these, or
就
2
结
years
果还
ago
是
when I
这
was
个
teaching
解释的很好，某个人不去把这
on
个
the
这个什么就是临终智慧经呢，就是以后你们要讲临终智
noble
慧经
wisdom
的
of
时候呢，
passing,
就是最好参考一下某个
I
人不去
forgot
这
that
里面
Mipa
调节
Rinpoche
很好
gave a。
首
teaching
先是
over
应该这样
here.
观 象，以无
anyhow,
边
I
无
think
际的
next
实
time
践
when
当中
it's
呢，
your turn, you
以
should
自己
remember
为
that
主的
Mipang Rinpoche
啊，
give
就是
really
众多
great
的众生呢，就
explanations.
是都有这个
Focus
无常的
on
这个法执着为是常
all
有，
sentient beings
然后
who
将
cling
轮
to
回和痛
impermanence,
苦呢，就是执着为是快乐。
impermanent
这是我
condition
们
of
现
things
在的
as
这个
permanent
共
and
同的这
painful
个事情
samsara
吧，
as
就是
pleasure
大家
and
在座的
experience
各位
death
都
and
是
endless
这样的，可能把无常呢，就是当做是世有的，身体也是无常的，
varieties
工作也
of
无常
suffering.
的，我们的这个住处也
Nowadays,
是无
what we
常的，
see
可是我们就
are
当做是把这个常有的
are
就是
permanent. We take
常
them
有的
as
有
permanent,
有
although
些预设
everything
的
is
话呢，好
really
像常有
impermanent.
当中也是
Impermanent.
常有
Let's
的，
see,
就像
our
好像
career, our
我都
houses,
看
our
这些很
relationship,
多
and
佛
so
教
on.
徒
They're
的
all
话，他是
impermanent, but we
连自
grasp
己的
onto
这个
them.
什么住的
Lay
饭盖
practitioners
的啊，就
over
吃的
here,
什么都不带，就是好像
I
随便来了，就
I
是这
see
样。
that
就
nowadays
这也
they're
是一种
quite
常
going
有
with
的
the
执着，还是
flow.
无常的执着吧？
I'm not sure if they're
好像理所当
grasping
然的。
on
像一般国外的话呢，
permanence
比
or
如说去一
impermanence.
个地方，你要住2
They're
天，住
not
2天的话
prepared
呢
to
那
travel
我
at
住的地方
all.
是怎么样？
They don't even
在
know
那
where
2
they're
天当
going
中
to
怎么
stay.
吃
They
饭，
have no
然后
luggage
在
or
哪
they
里
have
怎么
very
住，
little
住
luggage, and
住
then
的地
they
方的
just
这个
came
晚
over
上
here,
要
came
干
to
什么，
here.
白天
That's
要
it.
就是晚上要点什么，就是他
Too
如果在野外
spontaneous.
或者是在
But
一
I
些开
know
发
in the
会
West,
野外的话呢，都有这个
the
首先有
centers
思想上的
would
准备。但
you would,
是
as a
现在很
practitioner,
多
you
佛
have
教
to
徒的话
apply
呢，
to
就
the
是无所
centers,
谓，理
make
所
your
当然的，因为什
registration,
么不给
you
我
know
证
where
明，对
you're
不对？
going to
有
stay,
这种
you
态
should
度，
know
所以
where
说
you're going
这
to
种这个
eat
长者也
and
好，无
where
常
you're
之
going
者
to
也好，
sleep,
有点
whether
这
if you
个
should have
感
tents
觉比
and
较
so
就
on.
是特
But
殊的，
people
对吧？
come here, they're very spontaneous.
就
They
把这个
seems like
这
they
无常呢
are
这种
very
是常
ready
有的，
to
然后
rely
能会和
up
痛苦
on
呢，这
our
种也是快
people
乐的。
over
古尔呢，
here
就是
to
对这
serve
个
them.
生死扭转轮回当中干肃呢无边无际的痛苦之众
Generating
生
a mind
升起了
of
一个
a
强
great
烈的这个
compassion,
背信
think
呢，就看到
in
这些
such a
众
way
生的话
in
呢，
order to
哎呀，
free
这个轮回的
these
当中
sentient
把
beings
痛
who
苦
are
就是制作
suffering
为是
of
快乐，
birth, old
无
age,
常之作
sickness,
为
and
是
death
常有
and
的，
lead
正是
them
这
to
些众生呢，
unsurpassable
就是非常的
perfect
这个可怜，
awakening.
然后对他们
These
身
kind of
体
sentient
非
beings are
常强烈
really
的背信。就刚
pitiful
才不是
because
说大
they
悲向
grasp
吗？这是
onto
大悲向。
what's
第一呢，
impermanent
就是发
as
愿，就是令
permanent,
这些众生
and
呢
they hold
远
on
离
to
所
it
有
and
的这
suffer
个生老死
gravely
病的
from
这些
them.
危害，
May I
而且
become
呢，把
the
他们全部安
protector
置
of the
为
three
无常这个
worlds,
菩提的过位，就这就是
Buddha,
我们真正的这
transcendent
个发菩
conquer
提
and
心，
free all
将
such
自
beings
己
from their
自己
endless
呢，就是
suffering.
一定要就是成就三界护主如来真等觉的过位啊！我如果自己没有成佛的
If
话，没办法利益所有的这些众
have
生，
not
所以我们要发起这样的一种
attained
心
the
啊！
fruition of
看到这些众
Buddhahood,
生
then
中
how
呢，
can I
很可怜，我
benefit
先
all
自己
sentient
应该要
beings?
得一个过位，
Just
然后呢，
when
就是
you
把
look
这
at
些
all the
众生
sentient
要
beings
救
who are
度。就
suffering,
像我们
but
有
you
些人
can't
的话
not
呢，
really
就是看到
help
很
them
多
at
人都是
all.
非常穷苦的话呢，我
Just
自己
as
要赚钱，
when
有了我这个赚钱
People
以后，我
see
要这
lots
个
of
帮助这个解决他们的
others
这
who
种
are
生
suffering
活。
from
那有些
poverty,
人可能
then
自己
first of
开
all,
始
you
只是
need to
这样，
make the
后来真的自
aspiration
己有
of
钱的时候呢，就
generating
不管
wealth
他
so
们
that
了，
you can help
也有
them.
这样的。
But there are people who,
看佛
after
都不懂的，
gained
所以为
enough
度化这
money,
些
they
众生
forgot
的话呢，
about
就是
their
要这个超离痛苦啊。
aspiration of
那么自
helping
己应
others.
该选择具有
But
如此
Buddha
的
is not
这
like
个
that
菩提
at
心的
all.
基础的这样的这个慈悲心啊，就
You
这是
should
第一
then
段话，就是
generate
刚才那个
and
这个
then
临终
meditate
光
on the
临终智
concept
慧经
of
里面的
great
第一
compassion
段的这个
endowed
慈悲
with the
相呢，就是
bodhicitta.
这个意思。
So this
啊，意
is
思就是说呢，
this
就是要
passage then
临终的时候
explains
修菩提
the
心
first
啊，就这
verse
个明白了。
of
我们每个人要
the
最后要
Noble
临终的时
Wisdom
候
of
看怎么办
Passing
呢？就是
Sutra
最好是就为了你一切众生，就是
that's
我要
listed
这个
above.
以大悲菩提心来饶益他们。
You should
这是
then
第一
have
个
the great
啊，我们在座
compassion
的每个人都
and
最
the
后要离开世界
bodhicitta
那
to
离开
give
世界
such
的时候
kind
你
of
没有修菩提
motivation
心啊，
and
是
then help
比较可怜
others.
的了。就是这是第一段话的意思。然后第二段话
The
的意思呢，
second,
就是说同理
the
啊，
second
如果
passage
对
then
这个
explains the second
死亡
verse,
为
which
主的
says
一切
that
办法呢，详细
similarly,
观
when
察
you
的话
examine
呢，
all
你会了解
phenomena
啊，就是
as
一切诸法的这个
exemplified
根
by
本根源呢，
by
其
this
实来
death,
自于
you'll
自己的
find
分别
that
念。
they are
而
by
自己的
nature
这个分别念这
empty.
样的这个操
And
纵下
yet,
呢，
by
才能这个
conceptualizing
产
through the
生
force
所
of
谓的
mere
痛苦啊、
imputation,
快乐啊
we
等等
create
的感受。
happiness,
就我们
suffering,
现在
and
在座
benefit
的各
and
位
harm,
就
all
应该
of
有
these kind of
深深的
feelings.
体会吧，
I
就是
think
我们的
in
快
my
乐，我们的
audience, you
痛苦
must
呢，
have a
主
very
要
deep
是来自
feeling
于
of
我们的这
deep
个实质
an
和我们的
experience
分
of
别
it, because
如果
all of
究
our
竟当
suffering
中
comes
在
from
就
our
实际去观察的
conceptualization
话
and
呢，
dualism.
那所谓的死亡也好，痛苦也好，等
In
等
these
这些啊，
phenomena
其
really,
实是丝毫也是
if
不
these
存在的。
phenomena
啊，
really
现在又
existed,
开始讲的比较
there
深
would
了，
be
就是
no
属于
so-called death
听
and
一点不
suffering
会
at
一定
all.
能消化得了，就是希望呢，
Now
我们
it's
就是听完了
really
以后
profound,
呢，就
this
慢慢
part.
慢慢就像我们
I
医院
don't
里面
think
这
you
个
can
那这
digest
些
it
药啊，
right
一
away,
大包药就是，然后回去慢慢慢慢吃，就是
but
吃
digest it
吃好
slowly.
几个
You
月，
should
就
read
是
it
所以我
again
们
and
4堂
again. after our class. Just as when you get a whole bag full of prescription drugs from hospital, then you have to take it 1 or 2 pills a day rather than take it all the time. Mipa Rinpoche's language is just like that. It's very condensed. Paulson Rinpoche often say that Mipa Rinpoche's teaching has the inner, outer, and secret meanings. It has such profundity at the same time. It's so simple and so much practical pith instruction within it. So it's quite useful. So why is death not truly existed? now it explains in such a way, think in such a way, all phenomena are unreal, decide that this is the case and reflect. Likewise, all these phenomena, including death, have no established identity whatsoever. Yet, like illusory appearances, their expression is completely unobstructed. When analyzed, they cannot be expressed in terms of extremes of existence or non-existence. They are naturally non-conceptual and luminous. So non-conceptual or emptiness and luminous, that is the nature of our own mind as well as all phenomena. Therefore, there is neither empty nor luminosity. So, as a Buddhist, like what I said yesterday, I really think that lots of you have great faith. I see lots of new faces. I saw some familiar faces who show up lots of times. But compared to what we used to have, I think nowadays what we have is much better than before. It's a good progress, but we still need to continue to progress along the path. In fact, not only Buddhism, you have to do that. All of the teaching, all of the knowledge in the world should make such a progression as well. If you want to increase your wisdom, otherwise, without wisdom, you're just very blind. So, as Buddhists, let it be Sutrayana or Vajrayana, I think nowadays our Buddhists are studying quite diligently, and the wisdom really developed compared to a decade or 2 decades ago. And lots of the elites are participating in our Sangha, and they definitely invest a lot of their time to study. During the study, do not just think that, oh, I listened to it because certain teachers said so. Don't do that. Rather, you should really taste the teaching of Dharma. The previous masters who composed all these wonderful texts, each of them have infused their experiences within. Therefore, we should take the time to taste their Dharma. There are people who have accumulated great merit in the past and a good connection to certain Dharma. Therefore, they taste faster, and there are the ones who taste slower. But eventually, you will taste it if you really invest your effort. So at first, you should observe. You'll be able to see that everything is illusory-like and dream-like. And then you continue to observe it, and you see that the mind is really empty and luminous. There is nothing to grasp onto. The mind does not abide as any entity or non-conceptual thing whatsoever. Is primordially luminous. Is a state of present direct awareness. Of all phenomena of samsara and nirvana are totally equal. Emptiness and luminosity is what we repeat the most in Vajrayana teaching. So for those of you who have such backgrounds, then you should really contemplate on this. And then decide, therefore, that the enlightened mind of the teacher, Lord of Sages, Shakyamuni Buddha, and your own mind are indivisible within the nature of mind. So, our mind and Shakyamuni Buddha's mind in the nature is not two. The state of self-existing wakefulness is without getting distracted from that state. You come to possess confidence and develop certainty in it. that is a realization of the true nature of your own mind. I think this part is only for people who had some deep insights or realization. Then you'll be able to understand what this passage is talking about. This is rather quite profound. For those of you who study the the Sutra of the sixth patriarch, then you will probably have a little glimpse of understanding of it too. Other than that, there's no so-called Buddha whatsoever. In the state, in that state, there is neither death nor birth. Death and the birth are mere concepts. In the truth of innate nature of mind, free from concepts, birth and death are not established in any way. If you were to pass away while resting evenly in such a state, you will be reborn in Buddha field without experiencing the deluded appearances of intermediate state, such as the horrifying images that may occur during Bardo and Hell Realm and so on. You won't experience that at all, but directly be reborn in Buddha field. If you do not have such level of confidence, however, but still remember only the Shakyamuni Buddha at the time of death and throughout the intermediate state without forgetting, then that will be enough to lead you to pure realm. This is such a very important piece instruction because this is very simple. This is the easiest way to do at the time of death. Just at the time of death, if you can just remember and have great confidence of Lord Buddha or Amitabha, then you will be able to, and that will be enough to lead you to a pure realm. That's why it's quite important for us to chant the Buddha's name and chant the Bodhisattva's name at the deathbed of people. When I was staying in the hospital getting my treatment, I often feel quite glad to go to people who are about to die and would chant. I would go and chant the mantra for them voluntarily. Some really don't like me doing that, and some really want me to do so. There's a nurse in one of the Chengdu's hospital where I stayed. One of the nurses really doesn't like me because she doesn't want me to chant those mantras, especially during the time where all the doctors and nurses were gathered around of the deathbed of the patient. Anyhow, I would do the same. It's quite important for people who are facing death. Doesn't matter they used to be wealthy, they used to be of high status or fame. They had to let go of all of those things. So death is really quite scary, just as how in the treasure of Pith instruction of Longchenpa, where it says at the second half of the book, it has the verses on how when the time of death comes, you have to give up all the things that you have anyways, your clothing, your appearance, your body even. So at that time, chanting and recitation, group chanting and recitation of Buddha name is quite important to remind the person at the time of death. Just as whenever we want to go to a different country, we have to prepare passports and so on.
这个十尊手帕呢，还是有很多神圣的这个意义啊。
In the Shakyamuni Buddha's sadhana, it definitely has quite profound meaning. Therefore, I really hope that the Dharma teachers could give teachings on this, even if you have 1 day of 1 or 2 days of your weekly class, take that time to teach it. That would be wonderful. Moreover, no matter what terror and suffering you face in this life, if you remember the Buddha, you will certainly be liberated from any trouble. We constantly talk about how medicine Buddha could help you out when you are sick, how Avalokiteshvara is a compassionate idiom, but Shakyamuni Buddha, it doesn't matter what kind of suffering or whatever obstacle you're going through, you can get over of those just by supplicating to Shakyamuni Buddha. Whatever happiness and excellent fortune you enjoy, know it to be the great kindness of the Buddha, and visualizing the sources of the pleasure as an offering cloud of Samadabhadra, present them to the Buddha. Whatever happiness you have, then you can offer it to your guru and to Shakyamuni Buddha. Whatever joy you have, you should contemplate it in such a way that this is all the blessings of Shakyamuni Buddha as well as the guru. Constantly reflect on the meaning of the 3 liberation and 6 paramitas and other topics the Buddha taught. With great compassion for all sentient beings, generate the mind of supreme enlightenment and train as much as you can in the conduct of bodhisattvas. Recalling the teacher like this is extremely important. Constantly remembering the Buddha like this is extremely important. For it is by recalling the Buddha that we first set out on the Bodhisattva path. It thus has immeasurable benefits. So I really hope that you should build this habit of visualizing Shakyamuni Buddha or remembering Shakyamuni Buddha. Because when you do that, it is the foundation of a bodhisattva's path. Because you can't attain anything if you were just studying like a scholar. So you have to really constantly remembering and thinking of the Buddha. I see lots of newcomers here. You don't really hold malas with you. Do you all have malas? Should I ask the ones who don't have a mala to raise your hand? You should have it, okay? All right, you don't have to. Oh, you have all those counters, isn't it? If our mind is remembering and thinking of the Buddha, then it generates all the excellent qualities of the path. If we constantly practice on the visualization of Shakyamuni Buddha, on the Guru Yoga, and then all the merits and all the benefits will naturally be generated. Why are there people who are good practitioners and there are people who are terrible practitioners and going worse? It is really because that they didn't really build a firm foundation. I see that there are people in the Sangha who, after staying in the monastery for a longer period of time, they only developed more wrong views. But there are people who practiced just the same throughout throughout the decades. At first, they were like that, and then they are still like that, still have the same faith that they started with, or even deeper. So I really hope that the beginners, please do not to be so enthusiastic and passionate about the devotion and about seeing the guru. Do not then decline from a peak. It is best to develop slowly. And then reach some of them. They went from the peak of devotion all the way of touching the red bottom line. That's not great. So it's quite important to constantly visualizing, constantly thinking of, remembering the Buddha and the Guru in such a way that Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will definitely grant you blessings, as well as the protectors will grant you protection. And it generates all excellent qualities of the path. What kind of qualities? Qualities such as wisdom, such as the wisdom of non-duality, of kindness and compassion, and so on. And that will help you to go along the path. So, for people who take great importance of what lineage means, I really hope you could carry the Shakyamuni Buddha's image, even if you are traveling for 3 days. It's really not that expensive nowadays. You can carry a small image of him, of the Shakyamuni Buddha. For lots of you, I think that you change too fast. Especially the Chinese, you change too fast. Unlike lots of the Westerners, maybe at the first they're not so enthusiastic to begin with, but they would steadfast to develop their faith, and they become very very steadfast in their faith and devotion afterwards. These days, when everyone believes their own school's tenets, such as Theravada, such as the Han tradition, the Tibetan tradition, so everyone believes in their own school tenets. Even within Tibetan Buddhism, there's a Gelugpa, there's Nyingmapa, and so on. Oh, I study from this guru, and you study from the other guru. Yes, there are slight differences. But when everyone believes their own school tenets to be the most important, only a few people pay much attention to the teacher. That is our Lord of Sages, Shakyamuni Buddha. Lots of people only place great importance to talk about their guru. My guru is the most wonderful, but they don't really talk about their true and the foremost teacher, that is Shakyamuni Buddha. I don't think it's good to have this kind of a personality cult of gurus. This is not good to just worship certain individuals. Let's see what Christianity and what other religions do is that they have great faith towards their teacher to begin with, the first teacher to begin with. So we should really then have more understanding and more study towards Shakyamuni Buddha. Otherwise, without understanding the past stories of Shakyamuni Buddha, without knowing the biography, without knowing the merits of the Shakyamuni Buddha who started Buddhism, then it's quite pitiful, isn't it? Why? Because it is solely due to the teacher's compassion in demonstrating his enlightened deeds in this place. And time for us wandering beings of this degenerate age that teaching have appeared. If it's not Shakyamuni Buddha who then out of compassion to teach the deluded beings like us. All the other Buddhas build their Pure Lands elsewhere, and there's no. And how about us? Us, the mundane beings who are still who are still dwelling in this suffering samsara. Without the Buddha, we don't even have any condition to be liberated at all. And that means not only the three Pitakas, but all the teachings up to and including those of sacred Mantrayana, the path that can bring about a unified state of no more learning in this one short lifetime in this degenerate age. It is also solely due to his compassion that there are beings who hold these teachings, those who have entered the teaching of Sutra and Mantra and the Sangha of noble beings. Without the teacher, that is Shakyamuni Buddha, we don't have the Pitakas, we don't have the three yanas, we don't have the Mantrayana, we don't have the Sutrayana or Mantrayana, we don't have any, we won't be able to then step onto the path. Without Shakyamuni Buddha, we don't have all the past masters, we don't have the Vajrayana teachings, we don't have the Pitakas, and all of these said above come from Shakyamuni Buddha. If the teacher had not really light of teaching here in this realm, at this time we would not hear even so much of the sound of three jewels. So what need to speak of then of practicing the path of sutra and mantra? Therefore, whichever tradition we practice, whether it is from the new school or old school, to have the intense faith that holds the teacher as especially important is indispensable at all times. We must therefore be especially devoted to the teacher and persevere in this form of yoga. I know that I translated the biography of Shakyamuni Buddha for a long period of time, but I really think that after reading it, you will develop a sense of deep gratitude and then have deep and steadfast faith. Let it be you coming from Theravada tradition or Han Buddhism tradition or Tibetan Buddhism tradition or any kind of tradition or different tenets or different lineage that you're following. In fact, sometimes I think it's not really good to separate ourselves depending on different schools or different lineages that you follow. Sometimes we really have lots of division. We say that, oh, I'm from Nyingma and I'm from Galupa, and when the other person is not from that school, then that person will be like, no, you're from a different school. No, I can't do that. This kind of division and grasping towards lineages is not necessary, because all these lineages and the schools are teachings. They are teaching the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. I actually rather see that lots of Theravada masters are very inclusive. When I went to Thailand, the Yunnan province, as well as other places where they had Theravada tradition, where we used to really look down on them, isn't it? We used to think that, wow, the Theravada, they are Shravakas. Back in the 1990s, when I first went to Thailand for the first time, I wrote it in my diary saying that at first I thought all the Shravakas or all the Theravada practitioners there must be very, very stubborn. But I was really stunned to see how inclusive and how open-hearted and open-minded they are. Rather than that, when I went to Han places, the mainland China places, and that's so-called Mahayana monasteries, I myself sometimes feels, well, I'm a little afraid of that because he probably feels that I'm not from the same lineage and so on. Anyhow, in general, what I really want to say is that we are all disciples of Shakyamuni Buddha. Do not separate yourself as you're a disciple of this Lama and the other person is a disciple of the other Lama. Therefore, you started your trade war or technological war. This is not necessary and not meaningful. So Buddhists, I really hope that when it comes to you, do not hold on to your own teacher, your own lineage. Do not have the solid grasping, solid afflictions. We must therefore be especially devoted to the teacher Shakyamuni Buddha and persevere in this form of yoga. We have another singer over here today. So this particular sadhana was practiced in this monastery on the lunar calendar 15th and 30th only, so twice a month. But I really think after I came back from Xiamen, I then suggested that we should chant this sadhana every day in my class. So some felt that it's my own preference. Lots of people, they only chanted because it's my class and to please me, but not really that they want to chant it. In fact, upon observing such kind of mentality, I noticed, well, this is why I should teach this sadhana, because we have too much dualistic thoughts and grasping towards different lineage and different gurus, and we forgot that we're all disciples of the Buddha. And with the blessings of Mipa Rinpoche, I think we will be able to then unite ourselves. Today it's going to last a bit longer.
Ah. 下面有几个译文啊，就是这个本波仁波切当时这样的这个译文，如果有人这样想。
Continue to say that, well, there are a few people could have this and different thinkings. Some others may think, even if it is not teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, but Buddha in another form, such as Vajrasattva or Medicine Buddha, or other forms, such as the Vajrachana, and Sambhogakaya Buddha. Can I then practice upon different types of forms? rather than Shakyamuni Buddha, as a renunciated free from attachment, for example, or a peaceful or wrathful idiom, and so on. What difference does it make as long as we feel devotion? Why do I have to have devotion towards Shakyamuni Buddha then? So to such kind of questions, then Mipa Rinpoche answered in such a way, saying that essentially there is no difference, since all the Buddhas are the wisdom kaya, perfect equality. It is one taste in the Dhammakaya. And there is no distinction in their qualities of abandonment and realization. There's no differentiation of the medicine Buddha, of Shakyamuni Buddha, or Vajrasattva. Their merits are exactly the same. But there are then some kind of differences. Although there is no distinction in their qualities of abandonment and realization, yet from the perspective of a relative level of mere appearance, it is due to the Shakyamuni Buddha's compassion that the visualization and recitations of idiom deities of different schools, all their peaceful and wrathful forms are the path and training emerged in the first place. Shakyamuni Buddha is the fourth Buddha in our kalpa. And relying upon the compassion of Shakyamuni Buddha, it then is the manifestation of peaceful and wrathful forms. Therefore, just as the sources of all the water in Jambudvipa is Lake Manasarovar. In this Lake Manasarovar is close to Ganges Mountains, and Jambudvipa usually refers to India. So what it means is that the center of Jambudvipa, rather India, is the Vajra seat, and all the water of the that goes to there are from the mountain, snow mountain. Some would say that this Manasarovar is one of the is called the Maponyunso in Tibetan language, and Sakya Pandita then disagree with it because the shape of the lake is different. Deity, protector, Dakini, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are no other than they all come from the source that is Shakyamuni Buddha. And all appearances of the greater and lesser teaching of the practices of the path of sutra and mantra are certainly a result of this Shakyamuni Buddha's compassion. Just as when you supplicate your own root guru, you receive more blessings than by supplicating other gurus. So when you're supplicating your own guru, your own root guru, who's from your same lineage and who cares for you, and then definitely that blessing will come much swifter and much faster and powerful than supplicating to other gurus. Because of the power of your connection, supplicating, then the teacher Shakyamuni Buddha brings swifter blessing than supplicating any other Buddha. That's the reason why we should practice Shakyamuni Buddha, because Shakyamuni Buddha has a much closer connection to all of us, and he is the source of all the Buddhas and all different idioms. Therefore, upon supplicating to Shakyamuni Buddha, you'll receive the swift and powerful blessing. So all these kind of metaphors, I really think you should contemplate it as much as possible, because just think about it. When you receive teachings and when you consider this teacher is your root guru, such as when I supplicate to Pontsukul Rinpoche, I swiftly feel his blessings. And sometimes there are teachers, they're wonderful masters. I myself would consider they're wonderful teachers, but by supplicating them, the blessing doesn't come as swift because there are differences between the different kind of connections. I therefore really encourage you to contemplate upon such metaphor. The second aspect is that another then asked, well, does that mean I should focus solely on the Lord of Sages and stop supplicating other Buddhas? So this person saying that, okay, then fine, I'll only practice Shakyamuni Buddha and no other Buddhas else. Then I can just practice on one. Well, it is because different people have different capacities. So over here it says that, but it's not like that. Understand that whichever item you might supplicate is no different in reality from the teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, since it is taught that all Buddhas are equal in Dharmakaya. Samadabhadra, or those idioms from Tibetan Buddhism and Han Buddhism. In fact, there are no other than Shakyamuni Buddha in the equanimity in Dharmakaya. You must understand this point to think the Supreme Teacher manifests a different bodily appearance at this and that idiom deity, showing himself to be a refuge and friend to us all, the wandering being of this degenerate age. This is quite important because we would then maybe visualize a wrathful being and then later a peaceful being. But you have to understand that they are of equanimity in Dharmakaya. If you nevertheless separate the teacher and your idiom and give up on your teacher, believe the idiom to be somehow separate, this will make it difficult for accomplishment to arise. So that's the second question. Not much left. Let's finish it, okay? The third question is saying that similarly, in the tradition of unsurpassable sacred mantra in the Vajrayana, the Vajra Guru, who is the Vajra master, is in essence inseparable from all the Buddhas of the three times. And the Guru's manifestation is of even greater kindness than the Buddhas of three times. Since without the Guru, even though the Buddhas of the three times are present, you will not receive blessings and accomplishment. Of course, the Buddhas of three times are present, but if the Guru is not present, then how can you receive the teachings from the Buddhas? This means even if you make an offering to just a simple pour of the Guru's body, it is much more noble than making offering to the Buddhas of the three times. All the Vajratantra scriptures state repeatedly that simply by succeeding in pleasing the Guru, you will please all the Buddhas of three times and receive their blessings. For this reason, the Guru is known as complete embodiment of three jewels, or known as the fourth jewel. So understand, therefore, that the Guru is more powerful than Buddha of past, present, and future. So what he means is that, well, this person is asking and saying that, well, according to the view of Vajrayana, then we can just practice Guru Yoga. Why to practice Shakyamuni Buddha? There are lineages and schools which only placed emphasis on practicing Guru Yoga and don't even care about the sadhana of Shakyamuni Buddha at all. That's a little too extreme as well. You might wonder if there's anything superior to Guru Yoga and such practices. The answer is that there certainly is not. Although in the tradition of sacred mantra, there is no practice for entering the door of blessings, no dharma superior to the profound dharma of the Guru Yoga. The Guru who teaches us the sacred mantra is the fact, an emanation of the teacher, the Lord of Sages, Shakyamuni Buddha. In the section of sutra about nirvana, it says that do not despair, Ananda, do not lament, Ananda. In the future, I will manifest as virtuous spiritual friends and act for your own and others' benefit. since they have practiced the path of sutra and mantra that were taught out of compassion of the teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, the gurus are also the offspring born from Shakyamuni's speech. The guru endowed with the experience and realization is the heart son or heart daughter who has received the blessings of the relative and absolute bodhicitta of the teacher's enlightened mind stream. This means that whatever guru yoga you practice, you must understand the guru to be inseparable from the teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Not only that, you must understand that the guru is not separate from whichever idiom you meditate on. Today, it's a little bit long. It's quite important though, therefore do not feel too tiresome.
了知以上释迦牟尼佛的这样的恩德之后呢，我们对释迦牟尼佛产生极大的
acknowledge the great kindness of
他无二无别的上师本尊啊，就是并且呢念诵我们那个师尊
acknowledge the great kindness of teacher of the past to be supremely devoted to him. Having understood the gurus, idioms, and so on are inseparable from Shakyamuni Buddha. Whichever guru, whichever yoga of visualization and recitation you practice, be it the guru of idiom, it is certain that you will gain great accomplishment. Then, when you visualize and recite based on the practice of recollection of Shakyamuni Buddha, then you must realize and recite all the devotion of understanding that not only the sublime gurus who teach the Dharma of Sutra and Mantra, but all the three jewels of three times are two actually embodied within the Buddha. So, although there's in the context of sutra merely recollecting the Buddha is considered the most important, it is also quite all right to meditate on the Buddha and be or as being indivisible from the Guru, yet it is not absolutely necessary because simply recalling the Buddha will accomplish this aim. You could do that, it's not necessary, it's not absolutely necessary, that's what it means. That why is that? When you are calling upon recalling the Buddha, then you will be able to accomplish all the aim. In Sutrayana, there is no combining the Buddha and the Guru together, or make sure that when you visualize how the Buddha then dissolve, or how your teacher dissolve, or how the form is then invisible from the nature. So over here it says that you don't necessarily have to combine your Guru and the Buddha Shakyamuni together. It's not absolutely necessary, but of course you can do that when you recite Buddha's name. Buddha is called Lama, which means the root teacher. The Chinese translation may sound a little bit odd, therefore I translated it in the way that the Chinese student would feel more comfortable with. But in fact, the name is just Lama, is Guru, that's what it means. But in Chinese, when we talk about teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha, everyone would understand. But when you talk about Lama Shakyamuni Buddha, then you feel a little bit odd about it. And over here, Mipa Rinpoche explained why he calls it Lama. Because Buddha is the Guru of three worlds. That is why it is not an appropriate name for the Buddha. But if you understand it as a sign, that the Buddha is indivisible from whichever Guru you have faith in, that is also all right. In any case, even if you practice, on one hand, you can practice in the Sutrayana way or the Vajrayana way, such as you practice in the way that you see Shakyamuni Buddha is no other than your teacher. Then in such a way, then you can call Shakyamuni Buddha as your Lama Shakyamuni Buddha. In Tibetan, when chanting this, it says Lama Shakyamuni Buddha. That's why Mipa Rinpoche then explained it in such a way. During the sadhana practice, you can practice just up on visualizing Shakyamuni Buddha, or you could practice it in such a way as that the nature of Shakyamuni Buddha is your teacher, and the appearance is Shakyamuni. The nature of Shakyamuni Buddha is your guru, and then the appearance is Shakyamuni Buddha. Since the guru, him or herself, is the essence, is the essential embodiment of all the Buddhas, then whichever Buddha you meditate on, and in whichever form, there is no contradiction. It is in the nature of things that blessings too will arise in accordance with your own devotion. And then the next part, it has some short verses. We will also explain it. Although we didn't finish the whole text of biography of Shakyamuni Buddha, at least we should then complete the teaching of the practice chapter. So over here at the end it says that it's Mipa Rinpoche who humbly saying that I myself am a mundane being who is fettered by afflictions. Mipa Rinpoche is rather very humble compared to Longchenpa, who would praise extensively about himself at the end of any composition. Longchenpa would say that would have said that I am the wisdom space that has so and so on. That's what he would compose about this. For the Buddha, whose truthful words once praised and said that whomsoever have heard the name of Shakyamuni Buddha would then attain the Bodhi, attain the unregressed Bodhi. Even the animals whomsoever hears the name of Shakyamuni Buddha, they will also be on the path of no regression. Now we should consider ourselves as really meritorious because we have the eye faculty where we can see the image of the Buddha. We can use our ear faculty to then hear the name of Shakyamuni Buddha. We can use our nose faculty or taste faculty or the tongue faculty, but anyhow, we can use our body, our touch to our body to touch the image or the statue of the Buddha. So sometimes, although we consider ourselves as mundane beings who are deluded beings who are full of afflictions, but at least we've already heard the name of the Buddha. We've already now on the path of Buddhism. See, for those of you who see, we at least can see the Shakyamuni Buddha statue. Without auspicious connection, we won't be able to even see it. The incredible source of merit. This is the blessings from. This all comes from the blessings of the Tathagata. This sadhana of Shakyamuni Buddha should be practiced by the wise ones diligently. May this sadhana, which is composed out of a pure intention. I think at that time when I translated this, I finished translating around May the 3rd, and I was staying in the hospital for treatment. But in the afternoon, I went to the Minai Buddhist monastery, which is not too far from the hospital. I started translating the extensive biography of Shakyamuni Buddha back in 2001 in December 25th, and finished the whole translation in May, on May the 3rd, 2002. At that time, Khenpo Norba and another Chinese Khenpo was helping me to then transcribing my translation. And at that time, we had noodles every day, the kind of handmade noodles that you have to stretch it. So I remember that after translation, after proofreading, that was then completely finished at Minnan Buddhist Academy. I purposely went there to finish the whole thing. So today we finished this whole chapter of practice.